I found something in my attic last night. I'm recording this because if anything happens to me, someone needs to know what's living up there and why it knows my name. I need to be clear about something before I start. I'm not someone who believes in ghosts. I'm not the type of person who sees shadows and thinks demons. I'm a project manager. I deal in spreadsheets and timelines and problems that have logical solutions. I bought this house because the numbers made sense. The mortgage fit my budget. The inspection came back clean. The bones of the place were solid. But bones aren't everything. There are things happening in this house that don't fit into any spreadsheet. Things I've tried to rationalize for weeks now. Things I've documented, time-stamped, recorded. And every piece of evidence I gather just confirms what I've been trying not to accept. I'm not alone here. I don't mean that in some vague, spiritual sense. I mean there is something in my attic. It walks. It moves furniture. It listens when I speak. And 3 nights ago, when I was lying in bed, trying to convince myself I was imagining things, I heard it whisper my name through the ceiling. Not a name it could have guessed. My full legal name. The one I never use. The one that's only on my driver's license and tax documents. So I'm documenting this. All of it. From the beginning. Because if I disappear, or if they find me and can't explain what happened, someone needs to understand how it started. How something that seemed like nothing, just old house noises, became the only thing I can think about. This is day 183 of living at 1847 Maple Street. This is the account of what lives above me. Let me take you back to the beginning. 6 months ago, March 15th. That's when I got the keys. The house is a Victorian. Built in 1904, according to county records. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Original hardwood floors that creak in that specific way old wood does. Not rotted, just settled into itself after a century of footsteps. The kind of creaking that sounds almost musical if you're not listening too carefully. It sits on a corner lot in the historical district. Big maple trees out front. The kind that turn brilliant red in October and drop leaves that pile up like drifts against the porch. There's a turret on the southwest corner. Purely decorative. The kind of architectural flourish that doesn't exist in modern construction. The windows are tall and narrow. Single-pane glass that rattles when the wind picks up. The previous owner was a man named Charles Brennan, 84 years old. He'd lived here for 37 years. Died in his sleep, the realtor told me. Natural causes. Heart just stopped one night. His daughter handled the estate sale, cleared out most of the furniture, and put the house on the market within 2 months. I got it for $40,000, under asking price. At the time, I thought I was lucky. Victorian houses in decent condition don't come cheap in this neighborhood. Sure, it needed cosmetic work. The wallpaper was dated. The bathrooms needed updating. The kitchen was stuck in 1987. But the foundation was solid. The roof had been replaced in 2019. The electrical had been updated to code. The plumbing worked. It was livable. The only thing the inspector flagged was the attic access. It's in the upstairs hallway ceiling. One of those pull-down ladder situations. Wooden stairs that fold up into themselves. The inspector noted it was painted shut. He couldn't get it open to examine the attic space, so he couldn't verify the condition of the roof decking or check for proper ventilation. He recommended I have someone open it up after closing. I never did. The realtor mentioned it once during the walkthrough, asked if I wanted to see the attic. I said maybe later. I was more focused on the living spaces, the kitchen layout, whether my furniture would fit. She moved on quickly, didn't push it. At the time, I thought nothing of it. I should have checked it when I moved in. I should have asked why the realtor changed the subject every time I mentioned it. But I was busy, unpacking boxes, painting walls, learning which floorboards creaked the loudest, getting used to the sounds an old house makes, the way the pipes clank when hot water runs through them, the settling noises at night when temperature drops, the wind finding gaps around window frames. Old houses are noisy. Everyone knows that. For the first 5 months, I convinced myself that's all I was hearing. September 27th. That's when it started. Or that's when I first noticed it. I'm not sure which. I woke up at 3 in the morning. Not gradually. Not the slow drift into consciousness that usually happens when you wake naturally. This was instant. Eyes open, fully alert. That kind of waking that happens when your brain registers something's wrong before you're conscious enough to understand what. For a few seconds, I just lay there in the dark, trying to figure out what had pulled me out of sleep. The house was quiet. The rain had stopped hours before. No wind, no car alarms, no sirens in the distance. Then I heard it. Footsteps, directly above me. They were rhythmic, deliberate, not the skittering of animals, not the random thumps of something falling or shifting. These were footsteps, human weight, human paced, walking from one end of the attic to the other in a straight line. Step, creak, step, creak, step, creak. I counted 14 steps from the south side to the north side, directly over my bed, then silence for maybe 10 seconds, then 14 steps back. The ceiling above me, old plaster and lath, creaked with each step, not the random settling creaks I'd gotten used to. This was pressure, weight, something walking in perfect stride rhythm. I lay there frozen, staring up at the ceiling, watching the shadows from the streetlight outside shift across the plaster, as whatever was above me walked back and forth, back and forth. My first thought was a person. Someone had broken in. Someone was in my attic. My second thought was impossible. The attic hatch was painted shut. I'd walked past it every day for 5 months. It hadn't been touched. There was no external attic access, no vent large enough for a person to climb through, no way in. My third thought was animals. Raccoons, maybe, or rats. Something had gotten into the roof and was moving around up there. But rats don't walk. They scurry. And raccoons. I've heard raccoons in attics before. At my parents' house growing up. They're chaotic. They scramble. They fight. They knock things over. This was walking. Measured. Controlled. 14 steps north. Pause. 14 steps south. Pause. Over and over. I don't know how long I listened. Maybe 15 minutes? Maybe longer. Time does strange things at 3 in the morning when you're lying in the dark, listening to something that shouldn't exist. Eventually, the footsteps stopped, just ceased mid-pattern, like someone had paused mid-stride and decided to stand completely still. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. I waited, listening, barely breathing, expecting the footsteps to start again. They didn't. Around 4:15, I finally fell back asleep, or maybe passed out from exhaustion. When I woke up at 7:30 for work, the morning sun was streaming through the windows. The house was making its normal settling noises, and the whole thing felt like a dream. That's what I told myself. a dream. Or maybe I'd been half asleep and heard something else. Tree branches on the roof. Or the house settling in a weird pattern. Or auditory hallucinations from stress. I had a project deadline coming up. I'd been working late, not sleeping enough. The mind does strange things when it's exhausted. I went to work, sat through meetings, reviewed timelines, didn't think about it until 3 a.m. the next night, September 28th. 3 a.m. exactly. The footsteps started again. Same pattern, same rhythm. 14 steps north, pause, 14 steps south, directly over my bed. This time I was already half awake when they began, so I know I wasn't dreaming. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, opened the clock app, just to confirm the time. 3 a.m. Exactly. I lay there listening. The footsteps were clearer tonight, more defined. I could hear the weight distribution in each step. Heel first, then the ball of the foot. The way a person walks when they're not trying to be quiet, but not trying to be loud either. Just walking. Pacing, maybe. After about 20 minutes, they stopped again. Same abrupt cessation. Like someone had simply frozen in place. I didn't sleep after that. Just lay there until dawn, staring at the ceiling, trying to come up with explanations that made sense. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was some kind of acoustic phenomenon. Sound traveling from somewhere else, maybe. A neighbor's footsteps carrying through the walls in a weird way. Or thermal expansion in the attic, creating sounds that my exhausted brain was interpreting as footsteps. September 29th, 3 a.m. Footsteps again. But this time they were different. Same pattern at first. Same 14-step pace, back and forth. But then, after maybe 10 minutes, I heard something new. Dragging, like furniture being moved. A heavy scraping sound, wood on wood, moving slowly across the attic floor. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, then stopped. Then the footsteps resumed, but this time they stopped in a different location, directly over the center of my bed, not off to the side, and they didn't move after that. They just stayed there. I could hear the ceiling creaking slightly under sustained pressure, like someone standing still, but shifting their weight from foot to foot, waiting. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I did something I'd been avoiding. I went to the attic hatch. It's in the hallway ceiling, right outside the bathroom. Pull-down ladder design, the kind with a rope handle dangling down. The handle was dusty. The whole frame was painted over, thick layers of cream-colored paint that had sealed the edges shut. I stood on a stepladder and examined it closely. The paint was undisturbed. No cracks, no chips, no signs that anyone had tried to open it. The dust on the handle was thick enough that I could write my name in it. No one had been up there. So what was walking around at 3 a.m. every night? I spent that afternoon doing research, Googled the house address, searched county records, looked for any history of deaths or crimes, or anything that might explain what I was experiencing. Nothing. The house had a completely mundane history, built in 1904 by a local merchant, passed through several families over the decades. No murders, no suspicious deaths, no tragic accidents, just a normal old house where normal people had lived normal lives. I found Charles Brennan's obituary. Beloved father and grandfather, retired postal worker, member of the Rotary Club, died peacefully in his sleep at age 84. His daughter's name was listed, Margaret Brennan Foster. I thought about trying to contact her, ask her if anything strange had ever happened in the house. But what would I say? Your father's house has footsteps? I'd sound insane. Instead, I went next door. The house to my right is a narrow 2-story with vinyl siding and a chain-link fence around a dead lawn. I'd seen the woman who lives there a few times. Elderly, maybe 70, always wearing a housecoat, even when she's outside checking her mailbox. I knocked on her door around 5 p.m. She answered, after a long pause, opening the door just wide enough to peer through the gap with one eye. I introduced myself, told her I'd moved into the Brennan house 6 months ago, said I was trying to learn more about the neighborhood history. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she looked past me, at my house, specifically at the roof. Charles was a good man, she said finally. Did you know him well? Well enough. We were neighbors for 36 years. Did he ever mention anything unusual about the house? Any problems? She kept staring at the roof, not at me. Like what? I don't know. Noises, maybe. Or anything strange? Her expression didn't change. Old houses make noise. I know, but he never went up there either, she said suddenly. I felt my stomach drop. Up where? She looked at my roof, not at me, and said, he never went up there either. Then she stepped back and closed the door in my face. I stood on her porch for a full minute, processing what she'd said. He never went up there either. Either. Meaning she knew I hadn't been in the attic. Meaning she knew there was a reason not to go up there. Meaning Charles Brennan, who'd lived in that house for 37 years, had avoided his own attic. Why? September 30th, 3 a.m. I was ready this time. I'd set up my phone on the nightstand with a voice recording app running, external microphone plugged in, high-quality audio. If the footsteps happened again, I'd have proof, something concrete, something I could show people. At 2:58 a.m., I was lying in bed, wide awake, watching the clock. 3 a.m. The footsteps started. Same pattern, same rhythm, but louder now, more aggressive. The ceiling creaked so loudly I could see plaster dust drifting down in the moonlight. 14 steps north. Pause. 14 steps south. Then the dragging sound again. Furniture moving, but heavier this time. Multiple pieces, maybe, being arranged, positioned. Then silence. Complete, absolute silence for maybe 2 minutes. Then, a voice, quiet, muffled, coming from directly overhead. I couldn't make out the words. It was too soft, too distorted by the ceiling between us, but it was unmistakably human. Someone speaking. A single sentence, maybe. Then nothing. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely reach for my phone to stop the recording. I saved it, labeled it, stared at the ceiling. Nothing else happened that night. At 7 a.m., I played back the recording. The footsteps were crystal clear. 14 distinct steps in perfect rhythm. Pause. 14 steps back. Then silence. Then, at timestamper 3:14:22, a voice. I put in headphones, turned the volume all the way up, played it again. The voice was male, low, calm, speaking slowly. I still couldn't make out all the words, but I caught 2 of them, clear as day. She's listening. I played it 17 times that morning. She's listening. No question. Those were the words. Someone, something, in my attic, knew I was paying attention. I sat on my bed for hours, trying to decide what to do. Call the police? And tell them what? That I had a recording of footsteps and a voice in my attic. But the attic hatch was sealed, and there's no way anyone could be up there. They'd think I was insane, or making it up, or they'd come, check the attic, find nothing, and leave. Call a paranormal investigator? I don't believe in that. Or I didn't. But what else explained this? Call a friend? My sister? Someone who could stay with me? Confirm I wasn't losing my mind? I did nothing. I went to work, sat through meetings, pretended everything was normal, came home, made dinner, watched TV, acted like I wasn't living in a house where something walked above me every night at 3 a.m. That night I didn't sleep, just lay in bed, fully clothed, lights on, waiting. 3 a.m. came and went. No footsteps. I felt relief and disappointment in equal measure. Relief that maybe it was over. Disappointment that I had no witnesses, no confirmation. Around 3:30, I got up to use the bathroom. The hallway was dark. I flipped the light switch, and that's when I saw it. The attic hatch. The paint seal was broken. Not cracked, not chipped. Broken. A clean line all the way around the frame where the paint had separated from the wood. And the hatch itself was open. Just an inch. A perfect 1-inch gap of darkness between the hatch and the frame. I stood there in the hallway, staring up at that gap, and I knew with absolute certainty that it had been closed when I'd checked it that morning. Closed and sealed and painted shut. Something had opened it from the inside. That was 4 days ago. I haven't opened it further, haven't pulled down the ladder, haven't looked inside, because now I know something's up there, something that walks, something that moves furniture, something that knows I'm listening, and tomorrow night, I'm going up. I have to know what it is. I have to know why it knows my name. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when I finally go into the attic. Because once I climb that ladder, there's no going back.